Gotcha. Wow, good turn. I think we're ready to get started. Welcome, and welcome to our live stream audience. Thank you for coming here today. Thanks for joining the Flash Forward Festival. My name is Stella Kramer. I'm a photo editor and creative consultant. Following this presentation, we'll have about an hour, and then there's the opening of the Flash Forward 2011 group show exhibition upstairs. Starts at 7. You're all invited. Bring your friends, bring your relatives. Please enjoy. Make sure you take a look at the work on this floor. Humble Arts, Aileen Smithson, and Maxine Healthman, And then there's the work upstairs. We hope you all look at it, plus the work that's on the grounds of the hotel here. So we hope you see that one as well. You're all here for the panel, The Secrets of Getting Your Work Seen and Exhibited, moderated by Jim Fitz. And the panel will have Dina Deitsch. Is that how you pronounce your name? Deitsch. Sorry about that. Jason Landry and Cary Wolinsky. Two of the most frequently asked questions by photographers today are, how can I get my work seen, and how can I get my work into galleries and collections? This panel, which is comprised of a photo gallery owner, a world-renowned editorial and fine arts photographer, a prominent photography collector, and a museum curator, will provide emerging and established photographers with the best practices to use in getting their work seen and exhibited. Topics will include how to prepare for a portfolio review, the value of online galleries such as Tumblr, Facebook, and LinkedIn, participating in competitions and charity auctions, and attending national photo festivals. This is a rare opportunity for photographers to hear firsthand how galleries, collectors, and curators review and select work for exhibition. The moderator today is Jim Fitz, a fine art photographer, teacher, lecturer, curator, and collector for over 30 years. Panelists: Dina Deitsch, Curator of Contemporary Art at deCordova Sculpture Park and Museum, where she organized the 2010 and 2012 deCordova Biennial, the platform exhibition series, and numerous group, thematic, and solo exhibitions. We have Jason Landry, the owner-director of Panopticon Gallery in Boston, Massachusetts, and Cary Wolinsky, an editorial, commercial, and fine art photographer who's been a National Geographic photographer since 1972. He is also a founder of the Boston University Center for Digital Imaging Arts. And with that, let me introduce our moderator, Jim Fitz.
Thank you, Stella. Can you hear me? Greetings. Thanks to, I want to thank my panelists for joining us today, and Flash Forward Boston for inviting us today. And all of you online, thank you for attending. Everybody here, thank you for attending. Good side crowd. I'd like to ask a couple quick questions first, is how many people in the audience are photographers? Okay, what do the rest of you do? No, this is a question, is how many people have gallery representation? Ooh, not quite as many. How many people would like to have gallery representation? How many people would like to be in a museum? No, I'm going to keep going. What's 4 times 6? No. Stella pretty much gave my opening remarks, but I will say that I've done a lot of portfolio reviews here and around the country, as has everybody on the panel, and it's true that at the end of the session, I usually get asked, yes, well, that's all well and good that you hate my work, but how do I get to see so-and-so? Or how do I get in this collection? Or how do I get in this collection? And, I have my own philosophy and views on that, but I wanted to get this esteemed crew together to actually give you the perspective from a curator, from a gallerist, in the case of Cary, he's been on both sides of the table. He's been a fine arts photographer and a reviewer for many years. And I'm the guy who spends money on photographs. I'm more of a collector than anything else. And to give you an idea of what we're going to do today, well, we've gone over the panelists, so we don't have to go back over that. That is the correct spelling of Cary's last name, by the way. We're going to do a little introduction, and then each of the panelists is going to get up and have a short presentation, 3 to 5 minutes. Then there's some questions that we prepared in advance that I'll be going over, and then there'll be Q&A. And I'm sure you'll have a lot of questions, and don't be shy. Most of these people are nice people, with the exception of me. And just a little bit about me. I'll start off first. I'm here from the perspective more of a collector than anything else. And I've been collecting fine arts photography for over 40 years. And when I started, people said, why are you buying photographs? Why are you spending money on photographs? You know they can make another one. It's not like a painting. You can make another one. And you know, I was squandering a lot of money, but I love photography. You know, it's been a passion of mine. I'm a bad photographer, but I think I'm a good collector. So again, I will speak from that perspective. If you're a collector, this is what most of your rooms look like. They're filled with photography and maybe a Dyson vacuum cleaner, you know. Here's another question. How many people own a Dyson? Are they great or what? You see the minute tip of the iceberg there. I stopped framing photographs that I bought about 8 years ago. And I've got like hundreds of photographs in one chair. That's the story of my life. And that's a collector. I'll talk a little bit about what's in my collection. In the case of this, it's no longer in my collection, but anybody know whose work this is? Right? How many people worship Irving Penn? Yeah, I think he's one of the top 2 or 3 of the best photographers of the 20th century. At one time in my life, I was making good bucks, so I started buying more expensive photographs, and this is one I've always wanted to own. I desperately wanted to own this. So years ago, I purchased this 1620 Platinum for $7,000, which was a lot of money for a photograph when I purchased it. I will say one of the great joys of collecting is that in April, I sold this for $62,000, which makes my 401k account look like poop. It's not why I collected photographs, but it's a really wonderful, outcome if you collect prudently. I never collected for investment purposes. I always collected because I love the images, and this was one that I've loved since he probably, well, not quite since he did it, but I've admired since the 60s, and I really wanted it in my collection. And it started a kind of collecting fetish for me, which is double portraits. And this is a recent acquisition. This is an emerging photographer at his age. I don't know what he's quite emerging into, but this is Rick Ashley, and in some way, shape, or form, it relates to this, but in some way, shape, or form, it doesn't. This is another photograph that I went after in particular. Anybody know whose work this is? Anybody know Danny Lyon's work? Conversations with the Dead. I think it's in my mind probably the second or third most important photo book of the mid to late 20th century. I think Danny Lyon's work, in particular this, influenced a huge amount of people. And I've always loved this. I don't quite know why it's been fascinating to me, but I've always been fascinated by this image and went out and secured that. And the last one I will show you, does anyone know whose this work is? This is Shelby Lee Adams, another brilliant photographer, and I think he was just in town. Wasn't he giving a lecture for the PRC? It's a different kind of a double portrait. I think this is called Toby and somebody else. I'm not quite sure. Anyway, this is all I wanted to share today. I'm going to bring up the next speaker, who's a friend of mine, Jason Landry. You heard that Jason is owner and director of the Panopticon Gallery. He's also a collector. He's kind of just starting out, but he's got a nice small start of his collection. He's got a BFA and an MFA, and he's on the board of directors of the Griffin. And if you saw him last night, anybody go to the Griffin Awards last night? This was your MC, and I think he did a terrific job, Jason Landry.
Thank you, Mr. Fitz. My commentary about getting your work seen and exhibited comes from my own personal experience as a photographer, a collector, and now an art dealer. I have 5 simple lessons that I want to go over. You better have a website. I can't tell you how many times that I look up someone on the internet after seeing a piece of a photograph in a gallery or in a magazine, and I can't find them. If I look you up and you don't have a website and I can't bookmark it, how am I going to remember to consider you for a future exhibition? And how will an art director find you to do the next fashion spread in Vogue? Or a corporation finds you to create the next annual report? If you can't do it yourself, hire someone to do it, because it's going to be the best money that you've ever spent. Attend portfolio review events. This is where you're going to meet the people that it can advance your careers and give you the most honest feedback about your portfolios. The number one place for me to see new photography and the artists who I feel are in it to win it are at these portfolio review events. The artists that I have met in, let's say, Photolucida in Portland, Oregon, also pop up on my radar at PhotoFest in Paris or PhotoFest in Houston, PhotoNola, Atlanta Celebrates Photography, New England Portfolio Review events, and the list goes on and on. This tells me that they're hungry and are determined to succeed, and I love that. When I have time, I do scour the internet, especially all the social networking sites such as Tumblr and Facebook and Flickr and blogs. The only problem that I face is when you find a good photo online, sometimes you don't know what photographer made it, and that's because most of these images that go through all these social networking sites don't have the proper credit line. So make sure if you ever put your images online somehow, or if other people do, make sure that they credit you. People like me try to find you and we can't. It drives us crazy. Lesson number 3 is simple also. Create interesting marketing materials, the kind that I'll think twice about throwing away, because you need them to present to galleries and to museums and to magazines and publishers. There's no cookie cutter way to make interesting marketing materials. Just, be creative. And these are just a sampling of a few that I get at portfolio review events. So this is actually 2 bags worth from PhotoFest Houston and PhotoFest, Lens Culture PhotoFest in Paris. And I get to the airport terminal and they tell me my luggage is 25 pounds overweight and they want to charge me $50, extra to take this stuff home with me. I got to consider, do I want to take all this stuff home? I do, so make sure it's creative and worth the money. Attend opening receptions. Attend opening receptions at museums and galleries, especially mine. Don't expect to stay out on the periphery and think you're going to get noticed or exhibited or published, for that matter. Come up and introduce yourself. One local professor had his whole class show up at one of my openings recently. And during the course of the evening, each student came up to me, looked me in the eye, shook my hand, told me who they were, and then went off on their way. And I thought this was really classy. Just don't cling on like a sheet of snuggle. And the last thing I want to talk about is just follow up with galleries. If you show them your portfolio, every few months you should touch base with any of these galleries that you showed your portfolio to. Let them know that you've made new work. I love to see new work. And galleries and directors love to see that artists are continuing to make new work, and that's important. And that's really all the commentary I have for today.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Jason. Oops. Stella introduced Dina prior to me, but I just want to say that besides being the curator of the Contemporary Art at deCordova Sculpture Park and Museum now.
I will explain that.
Yeah, please. Could you put Museum of Photography, Sculpture Park and Museum, would you please? If you've been recently to the deCordova, and by recently for somebody my age, that means over the last 10 years on a regular basis, you know that the institution's focus on photography is getting sharper and sharper and sharper. And I desperately wanted Dina to come to the panel today to give us a perspective on not only curating contemporary art, but the philosophy of the institution, if she can, on what it looks for photography when they collect photography and exhibit photography. Dina, please.
Thank you, Jim. Adjust that. Thank you. Yeah. Why is a curator from a sculpture park talking to photographers is a natural question, I would think. But the museum, I don't know, well, I'll do Jim's style. How many people have been to the deCordova? Awesome. Thank you. So that makes my life easier. So you know that we do have a long history of collecting and showing photography. We are a museum of contemporary art, for many years focused solely on regional New England art, and the beauty of the region of New England is that it has very, very, very rich with photographers. So I feel very lucky that we get to do that. We have been emphasizing sculpture a lot more, but since a third of our collection, if not more, is actually photography, we've been quite adamant about always curating a photography or photography-based show, or always including photography in our curatorial philosophy and exhibition program. So what I'm going to do is just go backwards about what we have on view now, what type of work we're showing, and then give you a little, as I go through, I'll talk a little bit about what kind of photographers we look at, what catches our eye, and then I'll end with a couple of notes along Jason's lines of what to do and what not to do when you are sending a museum a packet, or if you do want to show in a museum, how you want to get our attention. So right now, I would encourage you, and actually we did have a really nice flash forward event just the other week. We have a fantastic photography show on view, and the curator's sitting here, so I could bother you about her as well. And it's a group show called Second Nature, Abstract Photography Then and Now. And the beauty of the show is that it uses our collection, which are basically, older work, highlights of our collection by Yorgi Kepish and Aaron Siskin and Doc Edgerton, people who are working in the 50s, and then pulls in about 30 contemporary artists, everybody from Luke Stettner to actually contemporary Stan Brakhage to here we have Megan Gould, Luke Stettner, and Alejandra Vieira. I think that's her last name. And so what's nice about the show is you can see from the hang, and which is sort of encapsulates how we're thinking about our collection photography and our curatorial philosophy, is that we're using sort of the best of our collection, somewhat historical, work from the 50s, but trying to pull in a trajectory to work that's happening now. So you could probably see a lot of the most cutting edge, really fascinating, really thoughtful abstract photography. Over 30 artists are represented on almost three stories, in fact. So we're sort of busting at the seams with photography right now, and sort of has a great way to sort of encapsulate a moment in photography as well. A lot of local artists are represented in it as well, and so it's a nice way to connect not only sort of broad national, international themes to sort of what's happening here, as well as collecting it to sort of the history of photography in New England. Before this, as Jim so kindly mentioned, I've curated, we do a New England biennial that we call the deCordova Biennial, and we do them in the winter. So we just had one in winter in 2012, and we did one prior to that in 2010. And in this last show, we actually had a good number of photographers, but I'll show you an example of a couple of them where nobody just showed photos on the wall, they actually showed photo installations. And so this is an artist, Corin Hewitt, who's based between Virginia and Vermont, where those are sculptures and abstract photographs, and the photographs speak to the sculptures. The photographs are made by actually the very lengthy process of actually photographing an object from his landscape, from his property in Vermont, blowing it up to a single monochromatic pixel of, a full-size photograph, but then burying that photograph itself. And so the photograph decays, and what you see in the wall are not actually the photographs, but they're actually scans of the decayed photograph. And the sculpture is a cast of a broken piece of plywood that gets punched and serially degrading. So there's this great theme about degradation, and the photograph and the sculpture have this really nice symbiotic conversation. And so this is sort of the type of photography that we were looking at when we were looking at a biennial. We were looking at how are people thinking of photographic processes in these gestalt manners? How are they thinking about it as a sculptural process, or how are they thinking about it in connection to sort of the broader conversation in contemporary art, where issues of failure and decay are actually very prominent, and how are they coming through in photography in very different formal ways as well? Another photographer, I hesitate to call this person a photographer. This is Matt Saunders, who really considers himself a painter, but what he showed were two sort of photographic images and a 3-part video animation, all of which begin with the act of painting, but the photographs themselves are sort of monoprint photographic processes where he paints on the photo gel itself, so that becomes a gesture in itself. And so the photographic process itself can be quote-unquote expressionistic or abstracted as well, and sort of the prints and the video animations worked in concert. Another artist who actually falls into the more diehard, he's very much a photographer in sort of his identity and practice, is a Cambridge-based artist, Eric Gottesman, whose work, though, thinks about photography as it lives in specific communities and societies. So he spends a lot of time in the Middle East, he spends a lot of time in Ethiopia, and he actually started a couple of photography collectives in Ethiopia for children who are all born HIV positive, but used photography as a way to both teach them a skill, but then also sort of have them tell their own stories through photography. And this was a series, and exhibiting this artist was difficult because he had really beautiful images to show. Like, you can just show really gorgeous images that he's done, but there was a way, how do you get through the whole sort of social element of his practice, which was what was interesting to us. And so this was actually a specific project he had done in Jordan, where he worked with a photographer there of an old style photographic studio who was recreating his original Palestinian village in his set designs, and sort of a village that he had never been able to go back to. And so we had Eric's really beautiful photographs of these sets, and they commented about sort of the concept of travel in photography, the idea of dreams and missions and politics and how that plays a role in it. And then we also showed a video documentary that Eric had made with the photographer Ahmed about his story and his career practice as well. So as you can see, sort of, when we're looking at photography to show, and we'll talk about this a little bit more. Before this, Jason and Cary and myself were all talking about the difference between, when artists have to approach galleries and artists, and what galleries and museums, what the difference is of what an artist will want out of a museum versus a gallery. The gallery relationship, the gallery will show a lot more photographers at a higher frequency. We show people on a slower pace. We do group shows, but museums are generally slower, quieter beasts, so to speak. And so when we choose a photographer, it's the beginning of a relationship, but sometimes it really is just a one-point, relationship where we show you in a group show. We're looking to sort of contextualize you with a larger conversation. So it really depends on sort of the category of exhibition that we're looking at. So for instance, the New England biennial formats really ask for you to look at new types of works, new forms of works, things that will really grab people. The photography show about abstract photography, obviously there's a theme as well. And then I'll just go through a couple of other, actually more solo photography shows that we've done recently. This was a Boston-based conceptual artist, Rachel Perry-Welty. Again, doesn't consider herself a photographer per se, but most of her work comes through in photography, or a lot of her practices does. And a lot of her work is really about the generating the excess of material culture, all of the things that our daily life generates. And so the large photographs are her Lost in My Life series, where she photographs herself sort of absorbed by, takeout packaging, or all of the stickers from all of her bread packaging, or things that you have from your everyday sort of commercial existence, and she collects them obsessively, but they're not things that she collects out of the norm. They come to her from her daily life, and then she accumulates them and sort of gets lost in them herself. And then the large wall is her deaccessioning series, where as a way to sort of purge herself every day, she would quote unquote deaccession an item from her life. A pair of shoes, a pair of underwear, some old teddy bear that her son had, and then she photographs it, and every day, and the project continued as we had it on our wall in the exhibition, and so every day or every couple of days, our curatorial assistant would print out the latest photograph and we'd stick it on the wall, because every day something else was being deaccessioned. So it was sort of a really nice living project. But then we also showed, this is Lucien Aigner, who was a photojournalist, actually most active in Europe in the 1930s. But he lived in New England for most of his life. After the war, he came to Massachusetts, lived here, passed away recently, and his family's estate was really interested in promoting him as sort of an important historical figure. And so on the other hand, you know, while we'll do a more, and this was actually the same season as Rachel Perry Welty, so we have a conceptual sort of contemporary artist matched with photojournalists from the 30s, but giving sort of a nice varied picture about the type of photography that we're interested in. And then finally, we've also done solo shows. This is Lala Saidi, who went to the museum school here in Boston, who quotes historical paintings, sort of 19th century paintings that look at sort of the Middle East and East, and sort of, you know, reinterprets it through her own family in Morocco. So really interesting sort of political connotations as well. And then finally, this was a group show we did several years ago. It was about images of children, presumed innocence. It was images of children in contemporary photography. And this actually was a national, almost international show, but based in a sort of a Boston area collection. And so we do really have a wide variety of type of shows. And then I didn't get a slide of it because our server was a little bit down at work, but in 2000, the museum organized a very large retrospective called Photography in Boston, and it was a real history of the local photography scene from 1955 to 1985, and it really encapsulated a lot of practices that the city really generated, and so that was a real watershed moment as well. And so that gives you a little overview of sort of the type of work we've shown, and then I'll just end sort of briefly, you know, how to show at the museum. We ask artists to send us packets. I think Jason's point about being at openings and being visible is very important. We do also work with galleries, so being networked and having an advocate for yourself, be it a gallerist or another artist or more a mentor or a senior artist, I think is very, very helpful. And I always tell people that when they send museums artist packets, to remember that there is a very overworked, very stressed, somebody with very little amount of time, maybe 2 or 3 curators who are actually reading it. So make it clear, make it concise, print out your images. People don't even have time to put in CDs, and just be really polite, because you'd be surprised. People think institutions are these massive machines, but it's really just 2 people sitting at a desk who are just like, that's cool. No, that's not cool. So, but with that, I'll look forward to our conversation, and thank you.
Thank you, Dina. Do I hear church bells, or am I going to see now? It's what? Oh, no, it's your phone. Okay. Cary Wolinsky, Renaissance man. I'm really happy Cary's here today because I'm the unofficial president of his fan club. I'm a huge admirer of Cary's, and you know, Cary does everything. He's a photographer. He's a teacher. You know, he's a founder of the Center for Digital Imaging Arts when he didn't have anything else to do that afternoon. He's been a National Geographic photographer since 1972, and he's a member of Tribe, which he's going to talk about. If you don't know Tribe, you're in for a real wonderful surprise. Cary.
Hi, see some friends here. Thanks for coming. I'll try to think of something new to say. I started with National Geographic right out of college. I went to BU. I worked for the Boston Globe here in Boston, and I was just in Boston at the right moment. You know, people were burning draft cards, and there was great tumult, and Boston University was right in the center of it, and it gave me an opportunity to get work published in the Globe right away while I was still in school. And from there, I actually got an internship job at the Globe and figured out ways to butt heads with almost everybody there until they really wanted me to leave. And then I went to National Geographic, and most of my career was spent, well, 35 years on the road, 8 months a year, photographing for National Geographic, stories of that interested me, things that I proposed. So they were historic coverages. This was a picture from a story about the history of wool. And what I'm going to show you, I'll just go through a bunch of pictures, but I just want to show you that every one of the pictures that you're about to see are in galleries. Every one of them are, I consider, better sellers. Some of them are in museums. There's a little cluster of those. I'll point them out. And so this beginning stuff is all pictures that I made without the intention, really, of putting them in galleries. But very early on in my career, I developed a relationship with Bernie Pucker at Pucker Gallery, who I went and said, would you show my photography? And he said, I don't know anything about photography. Will you tell me? And I thought, wow, this is a great opportunity. First of all, act covertly. Like if there might be a collector in the room who loves double portraits, lead with a double portrait. And then follow with a double portrait. This is in India on the Ganges. And this is a Cuna in Panama. And for better or for worse, my most famous photograph, which is now everywhere, I mean, everybody's desktop, it's been circulated, it's become Kleenex. I shot again for a story about wool, and I'd say it's, at this point, it's sort of beyond viral. This picture I shot for a story that was about the diamond trade in Africa. And I fell in love with this place called Coleman's Cup, and I spent some days there photographing. It's an old diamond mine that was, the story briefly is that somebody picked up a diamond off the railroad track in 1906 and handed it to someone else and said, this looks like a diamond. And the other guy said, sure does. And it led to the biggest diamond rush in history. It was German West Africa at the time, and people were literally lined up on their knees, crawling across the desert, picking up diamonds, and it's been, the sands there have been mined for diamonds ever since. But these villages grew up, workers' villages, and then were abandoned. This is the oldest desert on Earth, the driest desert on Earth, and so these buildings are very well preserved. When I came back and these pictures got published, I got an email from someone who said, that's not your picture. And I said, what? And I discovered, certainly I wasn't the first person to be there. Someone else had done a good job, had published a book on it. And so I don't know if people love this picture because it's mine. It's an interesting question to me, but it's been collected by the Museum of Fine Arts in this form. Other pictures in this group have been collected. This is at the Cleveland Museum of Art. And many collectors now have this series in their collections. This one's at the deCordova. It's from India, from the Festival of Holi. This is Ashgabat Silk Market. It was a story I did on silk. It's in several collections and in museums. This is in a museum in Haifa, in Israel, and again, one of the things I'm going to do is just talk about some things, and I'm hoping this will generate questions, but ask me questions like, well, how did it get there? And I'll tell you. This was actually one of the first pictures I ever made when I left the country. It was in an Indian temple in New Delhi, and it's also in museum collections and private collections. Tribe happened about 5 years ago. I know it's hard to believe, but I was tired of traveling for National Geographic after 35 years and wanted to do something else that didn't have a golden halo around it. And I met these three young women, the Casilio sisters, at a retirement party. They were mass art students, had just graduated, and performance artists. And they came dressed as the retiring professor who was portly. He was wearing overalls and he was bald. They came dressed as portly, wearing overalls, and were bald. And I said, wow, who are they? And I approached them and I asked them if we could work on something together. And it kind of evolved into performance for the camera. And what is interesting to me about this is that unlike anything else that we ever did, I focused on the art world, and this took off. It took on a life of its own. It's as close to experiencing something going viral as I've ever experienced. People bought these up, and there's been great excitement about these pictures, and it's been a very different kind of ride through the gallery world. This is also from Tribe. This is from a series called Shelf Life. This one, by the way, is called Paint by Number. They're identical triplets. Did I mention that? This is them too. This is called Homeland. The third one is in the picture in the background. And this one's called Fine. You have to say it that way. Fine. Just the way women do when you suggest something that they really don't want to do. Fine. And my latest set of pictures is actually something I've been working on for 5 or 6 years now, and I desperately wanted to get some of these into the deCordova show, and failed. But these are abstracts. They're all shot in the same place. They're shot on a tabletop on a little 1930s table in Western Massachusetts. They're shot with sunlight, and I basically set up glass sculptures to project images onto the wooden surface. And so far, these aren't anywhere yet. So if there's anybody who's dying to have this work, I'm dying to get it out there. Like Jason, I put together a list of 5 things you should do. It quickly turned into 25 or 30, so I'm not going to read them to you. But I will tell you that their headings were things like, how to look at a gallery, how to shop for a gallery, how to build a relationship with a gallery, doing due diligence. And I can talk about portfolio reviews, these big portfolio reviews, because I've been in them on both sides, and how to keep working. So those are all things that I hope will stir discussion. Thanks.
Thank you, Cary. It's fortunate enough that this is in the Fitz collection. I got this, and I'm fortunate because this is sold out completely and has been for a long time. I understand that there's a waiting list, and if people know I have it, they will actually break into my condo and steal it.
Yeah, I've stopped giving out your address for that.
All right, okay, it's a deal. I'm gonna ask a couple of questions that we've decided we want to address before we come to the audience, but we're gonna spend a lot of time, as long as you would like, to answer questions from you. One of the first questions, I'm going to address this to Jason, but it's to the full crew here, is I've noticed that portfolio reviews, paid portfolio reviews, have become more and more and more important for photographers getting seen and exhibited. And since Jason goes around the world and does those as an ambassador from the Boston world here, I'd just like him to, for you people who haven't been to anybody not been to one of these portfolio reviews? Good. Okay, I'm going to have Jason just give you an idea of what they're like, how to prepare, and why they're important.
Okay, well, they're a shark-feeding frenzy, portfolio reviews. And a couple of the biggest ones in America are PhotoFest in Houston and Fotolusida in Portland, Oregon. And they happen every other year. So if, for instance, this year was PhotoFest Houston, it won't happen again for 2 years. But next year it'll be Fotolusida, and then that won't happen for 2 years. But there's other ones. In Boston, there's the New England Portfolio Review event that's done with the PRC and the Griffin Museum. And there's one in Atlanta. Atlanta celebrates photography. There's Photo NOLA in New Orleans. There's Palm Springs Photo Festival. So they're all over the United States. Now they're starting to spread out, and photo festivals are happening all over the world. And they started 3 years ago, Photo Fest Paris, and they invited me to the first one, and they've invited me every year since. So this year I'm doing 5 portfolio review events this year, and that includes the Houston, the Boston one, Atlanta, New Orleans, and I'll be in Paris in November. Basically what they are is, they'll set up a large room with tables just like this, and there'll be 2 seats, me and you. And you get to bring your portfolio in, and we have 20 minutes to have a conversation. I may like something you have, I may not like something you have, but you're here to have a discourse with a gallery owner and a collector. So I go there with 2 eyes wide open. One, looking for work for my gallery, and the other eye is looking for work for my personal collection. And sometimes they're not the same. Things I collect, I don't often show in the gallery, and vice versa. But there'll be gallery owners at this event. There'll be museum curators, publishers, magazine editors, and every 20 minutes you're swapping seats and you're running around. It's like a cattle call that, they say time's up, and boom, they're gone, and you're at a different seat, and I got someone else in front of me. So it's crazy. It is. It's a meat market, shark feeding frenzy, kind of like speed dating. And if you're good at that, or you like high pressure situations, these are the places where you will meet people that will advance your careers, all in one place. And I urge you to go, and even if you just go to one, go locally to like the PRC Griffin one and just pay for one review, just to see how it is. If it benefits you, then maybe you go nationally, go to one of the big ones and pay to be in front of, you get X amount of slots during a 3 or 4 day portfolio review event. And then, you get to pick up a couple different reviews here and there if you stalk the reviewers when they're on their breaks or on their lunch, because that happens to me. I go there and I probably have like 50 reviews I have to do within 4 days. It's 12 a day or 14 a day. I'll get up to go get a glass of water, and there'll be someone like, I didn't get you as a reviewer. Can I meet with you later? Sure. I go to the bar later, and there'll be 5 other people with their portfolios. Hey, do you get 5 minutes? Can you look at my stuff? I'll get phone calls in my room, notes under my door. And I'm not kidding. So I'll go there with the mindset that I'm going to review about 50 portfolios, and I'll end up reviewing about 75. And I'll go home completely exhausted. But it is great. And the other thing is it's hard. It's hard to get in front of people like Dina or myself. It's hard. You can't just call up a museum and say, hey, can I get my portfolio reviewed? I mean, it would be crazy if they did that every day. Curators and gallery owners don't have time every single day to meet with people. So these type of places are where you're going to be able to meet those people that can advance your careers.
Jason, did you mention how much it costs to go to one of these?
Well, if local portfolio reviews, you probably could pay to get one review, maybe like $50 to $75. But like this Houston one, I believe it was about $800 or $850 for the 3 or 4 days, and that covers 16 guaranteed reviews. And you try to sign up with the people that you want. So for instance, if your goal is to get a book published, you want to hit up all the book publishers and all the book editors. But if your goal is to get your work acquired by museums, obviously you're going to want to try to hit up all the curators at museums, or if you want gallery representation nationally, you're going to try to hit all the different people that are there from the different states.
Thank you. Hey, Cary, I know that you've been on both sides of the table at these events. Maybe you might want to speak what it's like from the artist side.
Sure. So Jason said that it's a cattle call, and that if you're good at high pressure situations, this is for you. And you're probably always saying, well, scratch that off my list. It's not that bad. It isn't really that bad. The high pressure moment is, so everybody's in a lobby, with their portfolio under their arm, And, you know, the next one, when the bell goes off, the next review is in, you know, countdown, 10 seconds, 9 seconds, 8 seconds. And then they open the doors all at once, and all the people who are in there are like slowly packing up and getting ready to leave. And all the people who want to review come running in at the same time, and all they want to do is kill the people who are still sitting at the table with their reviews to get them out of the way because they only have 20 minutes with the reviewers. But after that, when you sit down, the reviewers are fabulous. When you consider the pressure that they're under and the number of reviews they have to do in a day, they are focused, they are interested. I can guarantee you none of them would be there if they didn't want to be. And I don't know why they're there. It's the first time I've really gotten a good explanation of why anyone would go to this. It's not like it pays well. And so they really are there. They're looking for themselves. So if you go with in your mind that these people are really interested, that helps. The other thing to realize is that something you said is really key is that is to go with selecting your reviewers based on your goals. So that assumes you have a goal. And let's start right from the beginning. Anything that we're talking about today, the first thing that you should do, and write this down, is what is my definition of success? Okay? In other words, I'm going to spend $840 to sit in front of 14 or 16 reviewers, plus hotels, plus airfare. By the time we're done, I'm sure we spent $2,500 to go down there, to get a review. It's like, what do I want to get out of this? Then read the stuff that they send you online. They have very, very detailed information about what each reviewer's background is. Read it. Some of it is dense. The other part of it is, what do they like to see? Much more interesting is, what do they not like to see? I never want to see another old building again, it says. And if you have old buildings in your portfolio, you probably don't want to choose that reviewer. I never want to see another nude again. I don't know who that person was, but okay, I get it. I'm not going to show you any nudes. So that is information that is really, really valuable to you. And the only other thing I could say is that I find it's very helpful to travel with 6-foot-tall identical triplets.
Good. Excellent point. I'm sure we all have those hanging around the house. I'm going to ask one more question. I'm going to open up to the audience, and I'm going to have Dina address this first. And, we've seen, especially us old-timers here, an incredible paradigm shift in awareness of photography. And I'm talking about social networking. I'm talking about blogs, websites. Jason mentioned the importance of having a website. Flickr, Facebook, LinkedIn, et cetera. I'd like to hear from the panelists what they think and the attention they pay to those or don't pay to social networking, and if they do pay attention, what they're looking for. Dina, I'll start with you.
I'm the easy one for that. I don't look for my artists through social network. If I find an artist who oftentimes the way I find artists is artists send us packets about themselves, which is very useful, or I find them through galleries or word of mouth or things like that. So if I hear about an artist generally and they happen to be using social media in an interesting way, then I'll go there. But I definitely I have gravely little respect for social media. I'm sorry. So I'm not a good person for that. I don't look for, unless, if I happen to be doing a show that's about social media, that's when I'll look for it as well. But that's my sort of old curmudgeon-y blanket viewpoint. So,
okay,
thanks,
Cary,
Jim.
Dina doesn't want to know you're baking cookies, I guess, on Facebook is the answer. But you guys want to field this one?
I look at a lot of different blogs. I was at the Griffin Museum of Photography Focus Awards last night, and one of the presenters, Caleb Cole, had mentioned that he was kind of tired of a lot of blogs showing all the same stuff. It's like you're just reblogging someone else's blog posts. So I try to limit the blogs that I look at because there's just so many of them out there right now. So I stick to ones that are just showing completely different stuff. And the ones that I think are the best ones are Lens Scratch, Aline Smithson's blog, and she's here today. I think it's a fabulous, fabulous blog. NPR has the picture show, and they show a variety of photography, different photographers. PDN has the photo of the day. The New York Times has the Lens blog. Flack Photo, Fraction Magazine, and Lens Culture. They're almost kind of like blogazines or like magazines, but in a blog way. Those are the strongest ones for me. I spend a lot of time looking at Facebook and Flickr, Twitter, Tumblr, all those other things. And as I said earlier, sometimes I'll find a really great photograph, something that I could fit into a show or a group show, and then I can't find the photographer because it's been retweeted or reposted 50,000 times, and I don't know who the original photographer was. Once I finally find them, they don't have a website, so I can't get anywhere with them. But yeah, I think it's a valid form to show your work, and sometimes I do find really great surprises online, and I'll give someone an opportunity to show in a gallery if I think the work is strong enough.
Okay, I'll echo that. I think that I spend too much time with social network only because I'm finding I have to. And I don't know if I'll ever figure it out, how to make it work. But I can tell you some things that have been effective. First of all, I'll echo the idea that if nothing else, a very basic website that shows what you do and maybe a little statement about why you do it, so that you have it as, I think of it as a business card follow-up. Because I pick up the phone when I call anybody or anyone calls me, and you do this too, the very first thing that I do when I'm sitting at my desk, hi, this is so-and-so, I'm a photographer. I type in their name while they're saying it, and I'm looking at their work before they get the next word out. And I decide right at that moment whether or not I'm going to spend any time with them. I mean, it's awful, but it's like, oh, God, this stuff is terrible. Or, oh, my, this is amazing stuff. Who are you? So there's that. That's that very, very quick hit. And then social networking. Social networking, like Tribe has a Facebook page. We have a mailing list. Cary Wolinsky has a Facebook page, mailing list. Here's the way it works. When people bought Tribe, they buy it, and then what I discovered was that almost 100% of them, I'd say very close to 100% of them, were collectors. That's really strange, but these are high-priced items, and not everybody wants, these weird pictures, but for whatever reasons, they were collectors. And then they are invested in you, and they are invested in your success in very interesting ways. And so they want you to succeed, and they want to know about your successes. So Tribe has a show opening tomorrow night, part of a show at Brown University. And I have been all week posting on Facebook, meet us there, see us there. We'll do a mailing that will go out. And so people who are already invested in us, and friends and family and so on, they'll show up and they'll be supportive. But I think what it does is it builds your brand. I'm going to hate that word. It builds your brand, but it helps people who have already invested in you have faith that you're still alive and that you're doing something that's going to help their investment.
All right, we'll open it up to the audience. Who's got a question? Oh, I know this guy right here. Yes, sir.
I have one for Dina. You were talking about artists sending packets. And other than cookies, what are these packets? And what do you look for? What
Pizza.
That's a great question. We do have on our website, we'll accept packets from anybody, and it's a great way, especially when we do these large group shows that are open to theme or they're open to just region. It's a great way to get it through a swath of people we've never seen before that we won't see in a gallery or whatnot. So what it is simply sending a cover letter, images, a CV, recent press, and sending it to our department. And what we do is review it, ideally twice a year. So, send your materials an FYI. Don't send us anything that we need to send back to you. Don't expect us to review it in 2 days and get back to you. Don't hound us. That's always appreciated. And also, one thing, print out send a digital CD or jump drive or whatever you want to send. But always print out your images as well so we can see sort of thumbnails and get the gist of it.
And, send an artist statement, but artist statements are a tricky path. I mean, we don't show art based on the artist statement ideally. And if we do, that's usually not a great idea. Keep them simple, keep them brief. Like I say, keep them polite. You'd be surprised how aggressive people get towards institutions. But as I say, we're just people behind desks, so be nice. And just be clear in an artist statement. Just give us the thrust of, what you think it is that you do. It doesn't even have to be clear, so, Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And nothing too complicated. Yeah. Actually, I like cookies. As long as they're like in a clear package that I know they haven't been tainted, I will go for them. So I'm not saying you can't do sugar. I'm a fan, so.
Okay, who else?
Sure.
Yes, sir.
When you put your portfolio together, how many pieces should I put in it, and should it all be on one theme?
Ooh, interesting. I'm going to have Jason comment on that first.
Is this for a portfolio review event?
Yeah.
You want to be able to have a articulate conversation with your reviewer for the full 20 minutes. I like to look at a lot of work. Some other reviewers may only want to see so many pieces. I would say you would, minimum in your portfolio, would probably want 20 to 30 great photographs. I would say show your strongest work. Nowadays, a lot of people are doing series or projects. I'm not that hung up on that, but I do want to see that you can put together a good project if you have one going. I find that photographers are their worst editors. I mean, you guys all need to know that already. You are your worst editors. You need to have a lot of people look at your work, and don't hide work from reviewers. Don't come in with a portfolio and have all this pretty ones over here, and then you hide a couple upside down over here. Because I'm going to want to see all of them, because sometimes it's the ones that are there that you're not that proud of that may be the real hits. Because you look at your work so much that you're so in love with certain images, you don't go back to your contact sheet or look through your other images enough to say, maybe there's something else in there, and maybe there's a hidden gem. So just have enough to have an articulate conversation with the reviewer.
Dina, you want to weigh in on this? When you get a packet, how many do you like to see in a packet?
Well, when we get a packet at the museum in the mail, 10 to 20 is enough for us. But when you are in front of a reviewer, I do think more is better. And I would also suggest if you work in series, try to include more than one series in your group, because sometimes being too consistent in your portfolio can get a little flat, and it can be a little boring for the reviewer. So the reviewer wants to sort of see a breadth and depth to your work as well.
Do you have anything to add, Cary?
Yeah, I do. I disagree only on the point of how many pictures I want to see as a reviewer. I don't like seeing a lot of pictures. I like seeing a nice solid 20. And the reason I do is because I really, one of the things I like to do, Andy Nixon is here in the back row, put your hand up. Andy came to me some time ago with some pictures that he showed me. I think we started with 20. Did we start with 20? And what we were able to tease out was a kind of direction where he had enormous strengths. And what I was able to give back to him was some recommendations about directions to go. When I see too many pictures, I often find it very hard to be able to focus. So it's just a matter of style. I would just, for each one of these reviews, they've set guidelines and recommendations. I will say one thing, though, about packaging. Photographers, especially from the camera club world, tend to get hung up on frames, mounts, things like this, and various other things. If you find your reviewer is talking about your portfolio box, you're probably in trouble. Yes, you should present very professionally, but like a good font on a page, it shouldn't get in the way of reading. And let your work do the talking for you. My advice to everybody is when you go to one of these reviews where you only have 20 minutes, let the reviewer talk and let your pictures do the talking. Make a brief statement at the beginning, and then let the reviewer look at the work carefully and talk to you. Most of the people who come to me sit down and talk for 20 minutes, and then they say, oh, there's no time to show my pictures. That's right. So, you know, if you really want to hear about your pictures, let your pictures do the work for you.
Great. Who's next? Sir.
Cary, a couple of minutes ago you mentioned that Tribe had its own site or blog. Do you recommend one blog, one project, or is it better to have a brand, say Cary's work, and in that would be the Tribe project or another project?
I'm not really a blogger because it's painful to write for me, and you know, most of the blogs I read are painful to read. So I kind of come back to letting the pictures do the work. We're right in the midst of kind of rethinking and rebuilding all of our presentations at the moment. What I'm seeing is with the rise of sites like Pinterest and others, Tumblr, and so on, you know, it seems like what people want is just a lot of stuff to look at very quickly. And what I'm looking for is kind of a sledgehammer approach. It's like, what is going to stop you? What's going to stop you for a moment and say, what is this about? I don't think I'm answering your question. I don't know that I have an answer to that question. If I get to do this again, ask me again.
I'll jump in from the collector viewpoint. You know, the guy at the end of the line who pays money, you know, for the work is I would do both, and I'll tell you why. If I see a great photograph like this by Tribe, and I know that I want to see more, I'd rather have a site that's dedicated just to this work. But if I want to learn more about Cary, I want to learn more about the triplets, you know, that's a separate site. If there's, you know, if you do a series on double portraits, you know, do a blog that's, you know, jimfitz.buys.doubleportraits.blogspot.com or whatever as well. What's it cost? Not a whole heck of a lot, you know. That's my advice. Next question. Yes, sir.
Online exhibition versus print-based exhibition. So much of what we see in photography is online museums, online galleries.
Who'd like to take that? Go ahead, Dina.
I appreciate a good online exhibition as long as it's very well done. I think like the Harvard Art Museums have done a couple of online exhibitions that were amazing. They were very thoughtful. For certain historical work, it makes a lot of sense, a way to show work that's very fragile, that's small scale and intimate regardless. So seeing it on a screen seems to make a lot of sense. It also gives I wouldn't say equal, but it gives a sizable weight from the image and the text. So if you really want to know about a history or learn something, I found like a well-designed online exhibition to be fantastic and a great resource. The Getty in LA did a great history of video art from Los Angeles a couple summers ago, and they had a fantastic online component where you could watch the video and then immediately bring up text around it, and then you could essentially reorganize, you know, the 100 videos that they had in different categories based on sort of their own categories as well. So I think for historical material, it's incredibly helpful and it's a great tool. For contemporary, I think, again, I think it has to do with the type of work. But I think it could be used very well. Like, you know, in our own research, you know, I do find that we look at, you know, gallery exhibition websites, and the installation shots are very helpful for us. So if you can't always get to a gallery in Chicago, LA, or even to New York, if I could have a really strong online experience of what that show looked like, that will be helpful to me. So
I'll jump in for a second and just say that if I click on a site to see your work, and I have to wait for Flash to load, for Flash movie to load, I'm gone. If I can give one piece of advice to you who are building your website is make it easy on a knucklehead like me so I can get into it fast, see your work, get in touch with you, or get out. Anybody else want to comment on Neil's question?
I know one gallery closed, or one gallerist closed her shop out in the Midwest and decided to just do an online gallery and do online exhibitions. Now, I guess if the gallery has enough collectors or a good collector base where they could just say, go online and take a look at this stuff and then, buy it, and they'll trust that person, it's going to be something great, then I think it would work. But I'm not sure in the long run that it's really the best way to go about it. I think you really still need to go to a gallery and experience a piece of art, whether it's a photograph or a painting. I don't know. I don't think I would, as a collector as well, I don't know if I could just go and look at an online gallery and buy something, because it would almost be like going to Amazon.com or something, or going to IKEA.
Interesting. Next question, way in the back. One of you two young ladies, you had or both of you, whatever.
Hi, I was wondering if you could give some advice about how to talk to and approach galleries without accidentally offending anyone.
The first thing I would tell you to do is find the gallery that you think you want to be in. And the easiest way to do that would be to go visit the galleries in your town. And by either meeting the gallery owner or director, or seeing the artists that they represent or the shows that they put on, you'll know whether your work is going to fit into their gallery or not. If you're doing landscapes and this gallery is only showing portraits, it's probably not the right gallery for you. I would start off by sending them an introductory email and just say, hi, my name is Mary Ann, and I'm a photographer that just graduated from NESOP, and I would like to show in your gallery. Could you look at my website? And I look at every single website that anyone sends me, and I have a folder on my desktop, unsolicited emails, and I never delete them because I do a lot of group shows and I like to show emerging artists, and sometimes I'll go back through there and find people that sent me emails. So I would start with an email, or walk into a gallery and say, hi, look me in the eye, shake my hand, I'm Mary Ann, and I'm a photographer, and I'd like to show you some work sometime, and I'm going to tell you exactly how you would do it if you showed up in my gallery. Some other galleries may not be that easy, but I would start by showing up in their galleries or go to their gallery opening receptions and then send an email. I do get a lot of packages, kind of like Dina at the museum. I do get some things in the mail, CDs, a lot of CDs, and a lot of 8.5 by 11 envelopes with all kinds of fun stuff. Sometimes they're paintings. And obviously, I don't show paintings, so this goes right in the trash. But I do get those as well. I'd rather an email first, and then I can look at the websites and then decide. If it's something that I really like, I'm going to call you in and say, hey, come in with your portfolio. I want to take a look at it. But if it's not, I may say, this is very interesting. If I do an exhibition in the future where I think your work may fit into a theme or an idea that I'm working on, I will contact you. And that's how I pretty much handle everybody.
The other young lady in the back, you have a question?
Hi, this is initially for Cary. I'm wondering how you edition your work and how this has been influenced by museums and galleries sort of over the years. Has it changed?
So much is changing all the time, and I think it's the single issue that is most nightmarish for me, because every gallery that I deal with, that has dealt with, has an absolute idea of what they think editions are all about. My New York gallery thinks if there's more than an edition of one, it's the end of the world. My Boston gallery thinks that 30 to 50 is fine. I mean, and so how do you satisfy both of them? I think that collectors, I was in a New York gallery when a collector came in and shook her finger at me and said, why are your editions so large? This was an edition of 3. And I said, well, because you won't pay enough. And that was really the reason, was because I need to sell 3 of them in order to pay for one of them. And the economics of these galleries, there's kind of an underlying economics that's going on with the galleries, and what they pay the photographers, and what they sell work and how they discount it and so on, that ends up translating into, you know, what's a logical addition. And I can tell you that there have been times when I've had a new work where I've been, you know, sitting with the gallery owner as the gallery fills up with people on opening night, battling over, you know, can I make the edition smaller? And my saying, yes, if you can raise the price, you know, per print. So it's very, very hard. I think that, you know, I love the approach, the old approach of make one print, laminate the negative to the back of the print, you know, frame it so that you can see the, you know, the negative on the back. Then the collector knows for sure that they just have one. Part of the problem is that everybody has a different interest. You know, when this picture sold out, a collector in Boston approached me privately and said, the edition was so small, can't you just make another one for me? I won't tell anyone. What's that? What size was that edition? 3. Yeah. And there were also 4 APs, so there were actually more artist proofs than there were in the edition, and we sold all those too. I don't have a great answer. It's kind of a nightmare for me. I do think that the trend is downward, and I think that you'll get pressure because of the economics, especially in tough times. There is pressure to lower the number in the editions. But there are photographers who do just fine and they don't edition their work at all. And, you know, there's a lesson to be learned there too.
Sir, we have a mic coming for you. Hold on.
My question is regarding expectations from both the photographers and from the gallery and museum. I would like the panel to talk a little bit about what different galleries and museums, what are their expectations in hosting an exhibition? And also for the photographers, what should be their expectation and what shouldn't be their expectation when they do an exhibition?
Real small question. Who'd like to go first?
All right, I guess I'll start. What I expect from artists, they should be professional first and foremost, and it's a business in a way, and you have to present yourself in a certain way when you're showing work and when you're establishing your career. You know, collectors and museums want to see that you're going to continue doing what you're doing. That's why when I said earlier, you know, when you go to make sure you show the gallery work, go back and check with them every couple months and show them more work. They want to see that you're continuing. They don't want to know that you're a one-hit wonder. They don't want to give you an opportunity to be in a show. And then they check with you 6 or 8 months later and you say, you know what? I don't know what I want to do next. I don't know what kind of series I want to do. And honestly, I don't even know if I'm going to be a photographer. That kills me, and it's going to kill every one of the collectors that may have bought your work at the first show that I offered you, and that makes me look stupid, and I don't want to look stupid. So being professional and being a business person, or having a business mindset as well, is one thing. Having professional quality prints to show in the gallery, and to the point, almost museum quality prints to show in the gallery. They should be matted and framed. And, you know, when I say professional prints, if you're not the best printer, like a darkroom printer, hire someone to do that. You know, if you're scanning your negatives and printing them digitally, make sure that they're the best scans that you can make, because I will see if, you know, I know because I was a photographer and I was scanning prints and stuff. If you're playing with a flatbed scanner and you're making scans and you're printing prints, they're going to be soft. And I mean they're going to be slightly out of focus. And I don't care what kind of negative carrier you have or what kind of fancy thing you have, they're going to be soft compared to a drum scan or a scan from an Imicon. And it's night and day. And I've made artists that I represent and not represent. They've sent me work. I told them, look, this is soft, send it back. go pay someone to do it and then bring it back to me. And if you are not convinced that your prints or this print is not better than your print, I'll pay for it. And I haven't had to pay for anything yet. So having great prints is very important because collectors are not going to want to pay for bad prints either.
I need to perhaps clarify my question.
Okay.
My question is that, let's say, the gallery and the photographer has agreed to an exhibition.
Oh, okay.
So from that exhibition, what are the expectation from a gallery or from a museum? And also, what should be the expectation from the photographer?
That's a good
That's
question.
the context of it.
Oh, okay.
My apologies.
Maybe I can go a little further. You mean the expectations in terms of sales, or the expectations in terms of marketing, or?
Why are we exhibiting? And why do the gallery and museum want to host an exhibition?
Okay. Who'd like this one?
I can talk to this, and then Jason, you could jump back in again. I think the biggest problem that we all have facing the art world as photographers is that we're looking at an illusion, because most of us encounter the art world at openings, First Friday, various other things that are having big events at museums and so on, and so we have this. At least I did. I don't know if anyone else does, but at least I did. I had this impression that the art world was all about showmanship. You know, it was like, this is a great performance, and it all happens on this one night, and it's all going to get sold on the first night, and well, it's not going to all get sold on the first night because it's all friends and family there, and they're not going to buy anything. You know, they're going to ask you to give it to them, and so you know, the opening night is totally an illusion. It's valuable in the ways that Jason said. I really agree with that. If you're looking for a gallery, there was a question earlier about looking for a gallery. One of the ways you can get a very good feeling is to go to openings, but also go when it's very quiet in the gallery and listen to how the gallerist talks about work and sells work. But so what is your expectation? The expectation has a long view, has to be a long view. The gallerist is looking at you in terms of an investment. Now there are two kinds of shows. One is the gallery representation, which is a very long view, and the other one is a gallery that's putting together group shows. And you know, so one is a marriage, and the other one's a one-night stand. And you know, the one that you know we're all kind of looking at and dreaming about is the long view one, where you go into a gallery, the gallerist is in love with your work, and you know, frankly, the opening night is just a stepping stone. In my mind, it's setting you up for dramatic postpartum. When that gallery show is open, and then no matter what happens, sell everything, sell nothing, whatever it is, you're going to be depressed. You better be working on something else beyond that, with your gallerist, on your own, whatever it is, looking ahead of that. So your view should be the long view, and your expectation should be that we're going to work together. This is a collaboration between me, the photographer, and the gallerist to build awareness of my work, to build faith in me as an artist, to be able to allow that gallery to continue opening its doors every day, and for me to continue supporting what I love to do. The other question, and this is another big one, is, you know, does anybody in this room want to make a living as an artist? That might be at the heart of your question. I don't know anyone who makes a living as an artist. I mean, there are some people, but the other day I had a conversation with the curator of a gallery, a regional gallery, and I said, does anybody that you show, you have 400 artists on their list, does anybody that you show make a living as an artist? He thought and thought and thought, and he said, well, of the 400, there's one, and he's a furniture maker. So that's a pretty low percentage. And so I think that there are artists out there, even the most visible of them. I'm always surprised to hear that Often they are not making a living, doing what we do. And so if you are thinking that you'd like to make this a living, and I guess I've had that fantasy too, one of the things that I'd suggest doing would be to look at the people who are very successful and talk to them and say, hey, do you make a living at this? And hear their story. And that might help adjust your expectations.
All right, we have time for maybe one, maybe two questions, so I'm gonna give Dina a pass on this one. Young lady?
It sounds like, oh, this is really weird. It sounds like, Jason, you're very open towards looking at unsolicited materials. You gave a great answer to the gal in the back. But one of the things that I'm hoping maybe you all can address, I think is more realistic of what's going on. I know that about 10 or 12 years ago, galleries were very open. People sent slides back then. They were very open to looking at your slides. It almost seemed like galleries considered that a part of their job, to be aware of what was going on in the community. And now, for the most part, galleries are not interested in unsolicited submissions. So I was wondering, if you could really realistically address how people are supposed to get a foothold and even get a gallerist to be aware of their work when your gallery excluded, you can go into all the galleries you want and try to get a sense by observing. For the most part, they do not want to look at unsolicited material, so maybe you can address that would be great.
Well, to me, the main reason is because they get so many. They're getting. Yeah, I mean.
Oh, heck yeah.
Yes. There's so many more schools. There's so many more degrees. It's gone viral, photography, and that's based on a couple things, and that's social media and camera-enabled cell phones and digital cameras have made millions of people photographers nowadays. And everyone thinks of themselves as a photographer, So they get so many of these unsolicited portfolios or CDs in the mail that they just can't look at them. So that's why they say, we're not taking any. Also, some galleries want to keep just a certain number of artists in their stable because they want to actively help them manage their careers. Some galleries, then there's the other gallery that has 400 artists. I don't know how you can personally help 400 artists at the same time because they all have little egos that need to be massaged on a daily basis. And I just can't do it. I try. I get.
Ran into a little ego?
Yeah, so. So what happens is I go to portfolio review events because I find these artists that I feel are in it to win it. They're all over the place. I see them on blogs. I see them. I see their stuff come in the mail, even though I don't really take a lot of mailings anymore. They email me, and other collectors such as Jim or friends like Cary will say, hey, did you see so-and-so in the Globe, or did you see so-and-so at whatever museum or in this magazine? And that's how I find a lot of people as well, word of mouth. But it's by quality, people that know quality work. That's really how I go about it nowadays. But then I work with a lot of students. Some of them are probably in this room. They'll come over to the gallery, and if I'm not busy, I want to talk to them because I've been in their shoes and I know how they feel, and I want to give as many people opportunities as I can. I'm much different than a lot of other galleries around. I look at things completely different.
The festivals are an outgrowth of this very question. Yeah,
I'm sorry, go ahead, Cary.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's the reason they're happening. The reason I'm willing to spend $840 plus or whatever for hotels and so on is because I know there will be receptive eyes there. And, it's much harder to see them any other way. And it's a sorting process. It's the cost of entry.
The portfolio reviews do separate the serious from the non-serious. And unfortunately, money is part of that, so it's just what it is. I made an error. I thought we had a hard stop now, but we have another half an hour, so if you can hold out and you want to ask questions, we're here for you. Sir?
When you're making decisions about collecting or showing, how much does whether the image originated digitally or on emulsion matter?
Let's see. Dina, you've been quiet for a little while. I'm going to throw that one to you. Does it matter at all?
It doesn't matter to me as long as it speaks to the project that it's supposed to speak to. So if your piece is about sort of a certain beautiful, perfect quality about a photographic image, sometimes emulsion's the way to go. If your project's about something more broad, like collecting or ephemera or something like accumulation, then it doesn't matter for me.
I think, photography is a survival of the fittest. So as the new digital medium grows and it gets better and better, I have no problem with buying, if you're talking about collecting, I have no problem buying a digital print if it's good quality. For instance, color prints, C prints, after about 20 years, they turn yellow. A lot of museums aren't even buying them anymore. And that's sad, because a lot of people went to school and used color processors. So I see gelatin silver prints, a lot of people buying, and a lot of archival pigment prints people are buying. Myself, I buy a lot of gelatin silver prints because I collect a certain thing. But if I saw a good digital print and I really wanted it and the image was quality, then I'm buying it. It's coming home with me.
And in terms of the origination of a photograph, whether it was with a digital SLR or just regular SLR, does that matter to collector?
I'll speak as a collector if I can. 90% of my collection is traditional media. It's gelatin, silver, or platinum. And I've only recently started collecting digital. And I only recently started collecting it because I thought the first digital prints were incredibly bad for years. But today, when you see work like Cary's, if you saw this print, it's spectacular. The print is spectacular. So I think that the bridge has been crossed now for someone like me, who is a hard person to get, to start to collect digital printing. But it's got to be great. It can't be poop. Okay, it just can't be. That's a technical term. And unfortunately, I see a lot of really good images by young and upcoming photographers that don't know how to print. And this is the one thing as a collector and a curator is I won't buy a print. I'm not going to spend my money on a print that I don't think is going to last and is brilliantly printed. So if you don't know how to print, I agree with Jason 100%. Don't do it, because people like me won't look at it. Do you disagree or agree? Anybody disagree or agree with that? Okay, great. Next question. Young lady.
In your collection, Jim, can you tell me if you have a differentiation between artists that are schooled and academically educated and people that are self-taught?
Because I'm crazy and I only buy what I like, and I only buy images that I think really move me, I don't care. I honestly don't care. I think that a lot of graduate students have been destroyed. I think that and I'm not going to put down all the institutions because some of them are doing really wonderful, wonderful work. The graduates are great. But if I see another deadpan portrait of somebody standing in a field, just kind of standing like this on a portfolio full of that crap, I'm going to scream. It drives me nuts. It drives me crazy. And I think that they've been told that this is what sells or this is what's important or whatever. I look at hundreds of photographs a day. I'm looking for something that moves me intellectually. I'm looking for something that moves me emotionally, and something that, there's got to be a level of ambiguity to it. Some of the work that you saw that I showed from my collection, I look at it's been on my walls for 30 years, and every time I pass it, I stop and look at it, and I enjoy it and I love it, but I don't know what the hell it means. And I think that's what continues to attract me. Whereas these deadpan Germanic, portraits of people standing in fields or against a white wall, I got it. It's going to bore me in 5 minutes. Does that answer your question? Okay. I get passionate about it. I'm sorry. Okay, go ahead. You get a microphone coming.
The second part to that question I was going to ask you was, as an artist, how much of yourself do you have to reveal beyond the image? About your process or about, if you tend to be like the kind of hideout, Salinger type of creator, is that something that's going to fly if you get in a gallery or?
Okay, we're talking here about how to get in a gallery. No, that's a tough question. Let me point that towards the artist. Cary, do you want to speak about that?
I want to hear the
Oh, okay.
I actually think that's a very good question. Yeah, I think Cary's point that your image has to speak is first and foremost, but I don't think you should ever be naive that people won't ask you more questions. And I think as a curator, my job is to ask you a lot of questions. So in portfolio reviews, I'll look at the image and I'll, decide if I find it interesting or not, and then I'm just going to ask you a lot of questions about how it was made, why it was made, because I have to know as much about that to relate to it. Now, if that's important to a public to know and understanding, I think there's a fine line, and I think there are a lot of artists who play with that. And it's about the thrust of your work. If your thrust of your work is biographical, that's something that you have to curate yourself and how you want that to be revealed. I don't think you should have it be the entirety of your project, unless you're doing something really. There are some people who are doing really interesting, emotive, strange sort of YouTube type video works, very sort of confessional. That's another thing, very performative based. But if you're talking about an image that you want it to live on its own, I think you should think through how that image is speaking on its own as well.
I need to add something to that.
Go ahead.
I'm gonna add something to that. In my gallery, I host these private events for collectors and curators and art patrons and publishers. They're called salons. And what I do is I have some of my artists come in and we cover tables and have them have their portfolios out, and people come in and talk to them about photography and ask them about their portfolios. And they need to be able to talk to them. Collectors sometimes love to know the artist. Like, I know so-and-so, I own this because I know them. They're gonna wanna know everything about you. They do ask a lot of questions, and they ask me a lot of questions. But, you have to be able to talk about your work, whether it's in a small group or one-on-one with somebody. Because sometimes, what if you become big and you gotta give an artist talk at a museum in front of donors, They're gonna wanna know everything about you. They will ask a lot of questions. I've watched it. And, some people get embarrassed and some people get scared. But, people do have to ask you questions once in a while. And they love knowing you.
Can I tell just the one thing about this? When I'm a reviewer, you get to see all kinds of work, stuff that's really dull and stuff that's fabulous. But the thing that most interests me is when I get a photographer whose work I haven't seen before, and there are 20 pictures and 3 brilliant ones. And there's 17 that are really, really dull. And I want to know about those 3 brilliant pictures. Were they an accident? Or did they really have any idea what they were doing? And is it something they could cultivate? Especially photographers who are just coming up. It's like they may not have seen that they're good at something. And to me, that is so interesting. So this is like just, a really basic, this question is like, how do you ask that question? And often I do, I say, did you shoot this picture? And if so, why did you shoot these? And sometimes the answer is really interesting. And what I've seen is that you get some interesting answers that then can go on to add something to build on.
Young lady.
How do you know if you're ready to go to a portfolio review? I know from experience that portfolio reviews they sort of have different standings, the different reviews. And how do you know if you're ready to be at one so that you're ready to save up your money and spend the $2,500 or $1,500 to do it?
That's a tough question.
I'll give you a hint on that. Before you go to a national review, go to a local review. I think Jason mentioned the PRC Griffin reviews. They are terrific. And don't go to a national review unless you really have a good body of work. Because when you show it to somebody like Jason, or you show it to me or Cary or Dina, we're going to remember it, and we're going to not remember it as a very strong portfolio. We're going to remember it as a weak or a mediocre portfolio. I'm honest enough to tell you what I feel about your photographs. I'm not there to be nice. I don't think that's my job at a review. I think my job is to tell you, this is good, this is poop, this is printed bad, you know, if you shot this, why did you shoot this? I think that's a great line. I'm going to steal that from Cary. And you know, it doesn't hurt to, it doesn't hurt to, like I said, try one out regionally, and you're very fortunate being here in Boston to do that. And they're good reviewers. They're great reviewers. We've all done it up here, and you know, we'll tell you and ask the reviewer. Say, do you think I'm ready to go to Photolucid or a PhotoFest? And it'll tell you. I would tell you. You know, and if they ask me and I don't think it's good, I'm going to say, no. Wait a year, do this, do this, do this, and come back again. And if you can see me, then I'll tell you whether I think you're ready to go or not. Anybody else want to jump in?
Yeah, Rick.
I was just going to say, doesn't the PRC, if you join the PRC, have monthly reviews?
They did when we were.
Yeah. we're ex-employees, so we don't know what they're doing right now. Okay. They still do? Oh, that's awesome. Well, that's great.
Yeah. Dina, how do you answer that question? Like, how do you know when? How would I be ready to send you pictures? How would I know?
This is a good question. I mean, because we get people at all stages, you know, people very early on. But I think, I mean, at minimum, a group of photographs that, you know, it could be a series or a body of work. And before I was like, you know, it shouldn't be too consistent because it gets boring, but you should have a group of photographs that fleshes out a concept, be it a story, be it sort of an investigation of something that, you know, if you feel like you have, I would say 12 really great images that work and sort of tell your story to some degree and really sort of feel that you've gotten your idea across and you feel that maybe you've investigated that idea enough that you feel like you could end it or maybe move on to the next one, or that you've gotten to the peak of that mountain. And if you feel confident in that, I'm always willing to see it. Sometimes I'll tell you, it's like, well, no, I'm not going to show it, but that's interesting and give you feedback. But I think, oftentimes it's like your third or fourth project or something to that degree. It's not usually your first one out the bat. I mean, unless you're like, you know, there's always an incredibly talented, skilled one, but I think you have to have enough images that you feel very strong about, that you feel are very good quality, but also sort of cohere sort of conceptually as well as a project.
I'll add to that, just show pictures to people other than your mother, father, boyfriend, and girlfriend. Form groups of people who really respect and develop a talent at talking about pictures with people who taste and knowledge about photography you trust. And that is very, very helpful. If you can find people who will be honest with you about what they're seeing, other than your family and lovers, you're ahead of the game.
I think that's a very good point. I think having like a strong crit group is a really good support system for writers, for photographers, for painters, for any kind of arts. I think having critical voices of people who are in your field, practice in your field, or practitioners in the same way are usually your best feedback, actually. So.
Next question, sir.
I have a question about presenting work.
Hold on a second.
Yeah.
You get a microphone coming.
So when you get an email from someone and you go and you look up their photographs online, you're seeing them this big. If you go to portfolio review, you're looking at an 8.5 by 10 or somewhere around that size. So if you have larger images that are suddenly reduced to this, I've had it happen, and even witnessed this, where I had a picture that you couldn't really see because online it's this big, and then when you actually see it printed at its size, people say, "Oh my God, I never saw that stuff." So that's sort of a dilemma when you want to go and show your work at a review.
Yeah. Well, if it needs to be big, real big at a portfolio review, is that what you're saying?
No, I'm just saying that there are some images that you sort of need to see at full size to see what they are. Like a painting you might go see.
Right.
And so if you have a lot of stuff that's subtle, or you just can't see if it's this big on your screen, then people aren't really seeing it.
I do have a couple artists that will make crops of larger pieces so you could get a gist of what they're doing. But, you know, I'm going to buck the trend. I really like intimate things, so large things kind of turn me off. I know that's going to sound really strange, but I thought this fad of the large print was going to go away. It's something that was drilled in my head during my bachelor and master's degree program, that you had to print 30 by 40 and 40 by 50 and 50 by 70, and I just think it's a crock of shit. I love intimate...
Say poop, would you please?
Oh, I'm sorry. Beep. I just think, you know, there are certain images that need to be big, and when they are, and they're big, they look great. But not everything that you do, not everything that you shoot needs to be big. That's my thing.
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying you have a series of images that are meant to be seen large.
Yeah.
They have a lot of stuff in them, but you can't really show them at that size.
I'll tell you what we did. We had the same problem. The web is not a great place to look for pictures, I don't think. So we tried, for our big prints, we had a lot of interesting detail. We used this software called Zoomify. So we plugged it into each picture, so you could keep zooming in and zooming in and zooming in till you could like see, you know, warts and freckles and things, and it didn't work. And the other thing was that I mean, nobody has the time to do it. The other thing is, when we went to the Houston show, we took along some big prints because I said they have to see the big prints, otherwise they're not going to appreciate them. So we took one big print, honest to God, in a sonotube. You know, there's these used in construction sites. They're like a cardboard tube that's that big around, weighs 400 pounds. And we actually carried it around in a backpack so that we'd like plop it down on the reviewer's table and roll it out and kind of bury them in the print. That didn't work so well either. I don't know. I don't have a good solution, but if you come up with one, let me know.
Well, no, I mean, when people come, when I decide I like something on the internet, I have them bring in whatever size they think they're going to bring. Even at portfolio review events, like you said, sometimes they'll roll something like a scroll down the table, and I'll fall in love with it. You know, so if you're going to be printing huge and you're going to have a meeting with me at the gallery or at a portfolio review, you better bring it the size that you're going to want to exhibit it at. Don't bring me an 8 by 10 if you think I need to see it, 4 feet by 8 feet or something. I mean, I get it. I mean, there are some things in my gallery that are 5 feet long that are gorgeous at that size, and people will buy them at that size. And then they'll call me up and say, I'd like to get one of these prints. Can I get it as 1620? It's not going to feel the same way. So if anyone's been to the gallery and they saw like a Bradford Washburn after the storm, climbers on the Doldenhorn of these little people with footprints, it looks great when it's huge. But if you buy it in 8 by 10, it looks like shit, crap poop.
Hey.
So
we're being broadcast. Keep in mind, all right?
but I get it. If it's supposed to be big, I want to see it big. But for me, I like intimate things.
I might buck the trend a little bit from what I'm hearing here. Is I think when people like Cary and Dina and Jason and myself look online, we have a trained eye. I think we can compensate a lot for that. I know I can. I've never bought an image that because it was big or because it looked big and I didn't like it as a thumbnail. If an image is strong, an image is strong, whether it's 300 DPI square or 30,000 DPI square. And I'm with Jason. I am bored by big photographs now. Unless there's a reason to make them 5 or 10 feet long, don't make them. Who has the room? Other than incredibly wealthy people. I'm sorry, Dina, go ahead.
I'll just throw in a very simple suggestion for you. If you feel that your work needs to be seen large on your website, do a couple installation shots with somebody standing there.
Good point.
And then that will give people the clue, like, oh, that's what it feels like. Because I think what you're getting at is that there's a certain physical feeling at that size that you're playing with. And so the zoom, you could do the zoom, whatever, but just throw in a couple of installation shots, and then even when you do portfolio reviews, show those shots as well. You can just do an 8 by 10, and then people will get the idea, because I do agree there's a lot of images that when I show them and they're framed a certain way and they're mounted and they're 40 by 40, it's a very different thinking of how I'm going to handle that image as well. So for me, it's always really helpful to see how the artist would ideally like to show them, and then it's a very simple solution that way. So, and I won't yell at you for large prints, sorry.
Ma'am?
I think we talk a lot about what the expectations are for artists approaching galleries, especially in terms of submissions. But I'm wondering if you finally advance to a point where you're communicating with a gallery about potential representation, what should be the expectations from the artist for the gallerist in terms of how the effort and time and investment that they're going to put in to advance your career?
I think that's to you, young man.
So you want to know what my expectation is of you, or you want to know what I'm going to do for you?
Everyone sort of, there's an understanding, usually I think, okay, there will be a show mounted, but I'm talking about sort of more behind the scenes. How does an artist, if you've developed a representation agreement, how do you evaluate if the relationship is moving forward, or you know, are you going to work with institutions, or how do you cultivate the collectors for certain art? You know, I think it's a fair question to ask, what should our expectations be of a potential gallerist?
You know, the first thing I would probably do is, I would say for you, you know, is like we were talking about earlier, check with the galleries that you think you want to work with. Maybe then check with some of the artists that are represented by this gallerist and see, well, how are they? What's it like to be a represented artist? I mean, are you getting shows? Do people buy your work? Now, this economy kind of stinks right now, but we do sell work in the gallery time, and can they help me get a publisher? Can they, are they connected with the museums? Do they do anything outside of just showing my work? I would say that some of you may know who I am, but some may not. I'm the only employee of my gallery. So when you see someone tweeting, Facebook posts, blog posts, updates on the website, hosting a salon, hanging a show, other than maybe having Jim come in once in a while, I'm a one-man wrecking crew. I get a lot done, but it's tough. But these are the things that I do for the artist. So I market your work, I try to sell your work. I'm like your business manager in a way, and loosely, we send out press releases, I write the press releases, we design postcards. So I'm an agent, I'm a marketing person, I'm a salesperson, I'm your best friend, your marriage counselor, massage therapist. I mean, I do a lot of different things. I think when, you find a big New York gallery like Howard Greenberg or Pace McGill, they got a staff of like 15 people. And they've got different people handling different artists. They have certain people handling just marketing. They have a social media maven that does just their Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, blog posts. But for me, I'm doing all of that for my artists as much as I can. When they ask for things, I try my hardest to get them in front of museums. I try to get them opportunities outside of my gallery, and I bring collectors and patrons to them, by hosting events in my gallery outside of the normal exhibition. So I mean, we do a lot of work, and that's why we get paid the big bucks. Where's my gallery? It's located in the beautiful Hotel Commonwealth in Kenmore Square, right near Fenway Park.
Now, Dina got an opportunity to tell you about the great exhibition at the deCordova, and Cary talked about Tribe opening. Jason hasn't had a chance to talk about what's at his gallery right now, but there's a terrific show called Planes, Trains, and Automobiles that's up there right now. And also, Jason is co-curator of an exhibition down on Harrison Avenue that's emerging artists. What's the number, Harrison?
I don't know what number it is, but
450.
it's 450 Harrison. Yeah, it's part of the South End Gallery Row. If you know that area, we're downstairs below Arlette K. Office's gallery. My gallery, Panopticon Gallery. Panopticon.
Can I come back to your question about what you should expect from a gallery? I have to kind of throw that back on you, because what you can expect from galleries is an enormous range of services. And Jason got at that. Like a big gallery that has many employees, you can expect more from them than you're going to get from most galleries. In this economy, what I'm seeing is that most of the galleries I work with can do just about get a show up, and then they're completely exhausted, and then they get the next show up, and then they're completely exhausted. And what I want from a gallery is I want all of their time in between. And so, you know, what do I want from them? I want them to be writing letters to museums. I want them to be putting my work in front of collectors. I want them to have an enormous Rolodex of collectors and people who they can bring in between shows. I don't want life to end at the end of you know, when the show comes down. And for the most part, that's what happens these days. And in this economy, that's about what you can expect. These galleries are all trying to do all of those things, and the bigger galleries, some kinds can do it better, but one of the things I would look for when you're going to a gallery is how many artists do they represent? This is really an important question. If they say they represent 50 artists or 100 artists and there's one person in the gallery, you pretty much know what you can expect from them. It'll be a show, and that'll be it. And then a year and a half later, maybe another show.
Okay, I'm getting one of these.
Are there any more questions? Take a last question.
One last question, young lady. Hold on, there's a microphone coming.
Thank you. I'm really excited that, Dina, you talked about it, and Cary, you too, about the relationship between performance art and photography. Especially in Boston, I'm personally a performance artist and I archive performance art. So I'm curious about, Cary, your relationship with Tribe and kind of negotiating, you know, how kind of ownership and just negotiating the collaboration between photography and performance art.
Ownership in, I'm not sure I understand the question, I'm sorry.
Well, thinking about how you document performance art, something that a challenge I've run into in showing performance is that, you know, how do you negotiate, like,
okay, I got it.
Whose work is it, and that kind of thing.
All right, just very briefly, the kind of conclusion that we reached is that we're not documenting a performance. We started out with that notion, and you know, I've read a lot about the spectrum of photography and performance arts, and I see at one end there is the documentation of a performance, and at the other end there is performance for the camera. We are closer to that end. We're at the performance for the camera. So the performance is designed to happen in the studio. It's designed, we're taking advantage of the technology, the camera itself. It's incorporated into the thinking of the performance, where it began with the girls. It started with they're doing street performances and you know, very brave kind of political things. We've documented those on film. We've documented those things as photographs, but the work that we show is something else. It is performed for camera. How do we own it? We own it a quarter each. There's 4 of us. Simple. It's not always a happy relationship, but that's the way it works.
Well, you know, what is? No, okay. I want to, 15 seconds and we'll let you go. I want to thank my panelists because as you hear, they're very busy people to take the time out to come and talk to you today, and I hope you guys have gotten something out of this. Thank you guys for hanging in there for so long, and thank Flash Forward and the Magenta Foundation for allowing us to do this.
Thank you.
I just want to say, since this has been such a fascinating discussion, that you might want to keep talking among yourselves or meeting the panelists upstairs at the opening for the show. So please go walk around, enjoy yourself, go look at the work that's along the waterfront, and please join us upstairs at 7 o'clock for the exhibit and for the company of your peers and everyone else. And please tell your friends.